IVM.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ, your host from London, and I've got with me a very, very special guest. He's someone who's got more than 12,000 first-class runs. He's had an excellent first-class career for Middlesex, Somerset, as well as England. Welcome to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, Nick Compton. How are you doing?
Thanks, DJ. Yeah, I'm doing really well, thanks, considering the unprecedented times we find ourselves in. But, you have to find a way, and it's been a nice opportunity to connect with family and spend some time, I guess, just making things a bit more humble and a bit more respectful of what we actually have, I think sometimes in the modern world we're sort of on the go so much and always looking outside of what we have. But it's just been nice to stay at home and do some of the simple things again.
Yeah, awesome. And Nick, you're actually in South Africa at the moment, aren't you? You're isolating over there.
Yeah, I grew up here, for those who don't know, and left for England when I was 15 years old. Obviously, I had a grandfather who played for England and had a by and large British family, but my family have remained here. So I've come back to see them and recover from an injury as well. So it's kind of been nice to initially have some sun and some hot weather and just to be at home.
Yeah, awesome. Interesting you mentioned that, Nick, because obviously you were born in South Africa, as you said. You've got an English family, but you moved over at the age of 15 to England. How was that? Because it's a pretty tricky time in the life of a young boy.
It is. It was a very tough time. I think my ambition and desire to make it as a cricketer superseded some of the difficulties, in the sense that, I had a grandfather who was a larger than life character and obviously a fantastic cricketer back in the 1940s and 50s. And I was fortunate enough to go and visit him at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13, many in the UK. And I think while I was there, my visions of English cricket, spending time at Lord's with him, it's hard for a young boy at that age not to have his eyes, opened, or sort of, be very wide open. And I think that's when I started to build that ambition of, I'd love to play my cricket here. So I think it was more opportunity based. I got back to South Africa, I carried on at school here, and then an opportunity came to go back to the UK. And look, it was tough. There were very many homesick evenings, and you miss your family. Of course you do. I was at a very nice boarding school in London at Harrow School. So I think, look, the opportunity and the chance to forward my education, but also with a future opportunity of potentially playing for Middlesex and England was there. So it was a huge driving force.
That's amazing. And did your grandfather, of course, the great Denis Compton, play a part in that decision at all, or was it made by your family, your parents and yourself?
I don't think it played a huge part. He passed away when I was 13, unfortunately. So he did watch me play a little bit on a school cricket tour in the UK. I stayed with him a few times. But I think by that stage, it was more my decision. There was no one forcing me to go. But I think if you get a scholarship to Harrow School, I think for anyone, from an opportunity point of view, whether or not I wanted to play cricket in England or South Africa, I think just as an opportunity to get your A levels there was a huge opportunity to move forward. So that was more the decision. But obviously, seeing those amazing pictures and success story of my grandfather and what he achieved in England, I guess for me, it was a proud moment to be over there and to be trying to achieve something that he did,
And it was never any other sports, because your grandfather played football for Arsenal as well, but you played representative level at other sports as well. So hockey, tennis, I think pretty good at golf too.
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of sports growing up. I mean, it's kind of a South African culture. I think when you're at school, everyone, you play everything, athletics season or whether it's rugby season. Obviously, rugby and cricket bring the primary sports here. So I did all of them really. I think when I started to get about 13, 14, I think you kind of start to work out where your sort of talents lie. But yeah, I think my teammates would probably support the fact that football wasn't going to be a future for me. Although we play a lot of football to warm up. I think by that stage, I'd sort of moved away from other sports. I had a few injuries as well in my latter years at school. So cricket kind of ended up becoming the direction. But I love football. I love all sports. I obviously support the Arsenal, and still play sort of, socially.
I think you've just won a lot of fans in India with your support of Arsenal. So, Nick, let's move on to your cricketing career. Of course, you shot to prominence in 2012 by scoring nearly 1,000 runs before the end of May. It was thwarted only by the weather, but you were just absolutely piling it on in May 2012. And of course, later that year, you made your Test debut. Now, I'm just going to set the background for this a little bit, because 2011, you had a massive series, number 1 in the world versus number 2 in the world. India had come over to England. They just won the World Cup. The IPL had just taken place. So there was a lot of talk about that series. And I remember going to Lord's and watching Kevin Peterson bat for 2 days, play Shant Sharma like a spinner, basically, which was not great as an Indian fan. And we lost that series 4-0. Well, when I say we, India lost that series 4-0. And they lost in Australia 4-0 later in the year. So when England travelled to India, for the Indian fan, revenge was very much on their mind. And I think Virat Kohli probably said in the one-day series as well, wait till you come over there. So, of course, you got selected, you got picked in the team to go to India. Were you aware of any of the stuff that was going around the series or the context around the series?
No, not really. I think that's probably the advantage you have as a debutant and as somebody coming into a new environment. You're fresh, you're innocent, you don't quite know what to expect. I think, you've seen a lot on TV, you've played with some of your heroes, against some of your heroes, but until you're actually wearing the England shirt and you're actually in the midst of it, it's very hard to prepare for. But of course, you do everything you can in the years building up to get to that point. And I think that's what the hard work had sort of paid off. I think at county level, I worked incredibly hard to be somebody regarded as a top order player that could really hold things together, much in the light or the way that Alistair Cook, Jonathan Trott, those kind of players had done. Jacques Kallis was a particular hero of mine growing up. So, Rahul Dravid would be another that I really looked to emulate, and somebody I admired and really respected. And so I think those players were the players that probably most exemplified my strengths and my strategies. And I realized also that, 2020 cricket had started to come in. So a lot of players were drawn towards the T20 game. So there was a good opportunity to really solidify my qualities and my strengths. And I think that came through a lot of hard work, of course, but I managed to back up 2 seasons in county cricket. And as you say, almost got 1,000 runs, be it for some rainfall one afternoon, which was a really sad thing. But look, it was great fun. I got 100 the next day and managed to get those 1,000 runs. And yeah, had a fantastic season, but, really sort of started to find my feet, batting alongside Marcus Trescothick and playing with some excellent players and a very, very good Somerset team. So I think coming to India, of course, I'd heard some of the banter. There was Kevin Peterson had played IPL cricket. He knew Virat Kohli pretty well. And then, of course, you had your legends like the Tendulkars, the Dhonis, etc. So, it was a very proud moment because India has been a country that I think people who know me will know that I see it as almost a second home. I've spent a lot of time there, both traveling, both doing photography, which is a passion of mine now, but also growing up, going to many cricket batting camps, learning how to play spin in Mumbai, for example. So, I remember going over there as a young guy and absolutely falling in love with the culture and the people. And, I grew up in Durban as well, which has got a big Indian population. So I felt like it definitely wasn't something that was too alien for me. And I really enjoyed it. So I think going there for my first Test series was kind of a dream come true, because we all know how much, the Indian public love their cricketers and how much they support the game. So it was amazing. It was fantastic. I think, walking out and taking guard and looking up, and suddenly I'm looking at Dhoni, I had Sehwag, I had Tendulkar, and I had Kohli there. I mean, you had to pinch yourself, I almost wanted to get their autograph and shake their hand, and then I remembered I had to take guard and face the first ball. So it was, it was a great experience to just be there. And I remember thinking to myself, there's 4 Test matches in a series. It'd be great to experience all 4 Test matches, to say, if I jumped forward at the end of the Test series and someone said to me, Nick, what was your experience like? I'd like to say, you know what? I played all the Test matches. I spent some time in the middle in the company of some of these great players. And if I could do that, then I think I've had a pretty good experience. If you contrast that to getting out early in the first test match, maybe playing one more test match and then being dropped, you know what I'm saying? So I definitely didn't want that outcome. So I thought, that what is the best way for me to contribute to this team? And that would be to do what I do well, which is really make it difficult for the opposition to get me out and try and spend as much time as I could in the middle, and thereby giving me an opportunity to experience, obviously, batting for 2-3 hours in India against some of these players. And it kind of worked pretty well.
Yeah, as you said, you'd kind of chosen that method of batting. So a lot of the talk about the England top three was, did they have the right tempo to succeed in India? Because a lot of other players had come out and attacked, and Matthew Hayden, for example, had gone the attacking route. But the chat was about tempo. There was you, there was, of course, Sir Alistair Cook, and there was Jonathan Trott as well, kind of similar batsmen. So tell us a little bit about that first test match where Pujara scored 206, probably a more similar batsman to you, and then Sehwag scored 117. What did you take away from watching those two guys bat in quite contrasting styles as well?
Yeah, very much so. I think that first test match, it was actually a tale of two halves, really, because the first innings, our first innings, and of course India's first innings were very different. We got bowled out quite cheaply, and India amassed a big total. And, you know, it was a good opportunity, I think, for someone like me and also some of the other players who perhaps, you know, hadn't had much success in India or hadn't really experienced a 4 test match series in India, despite having played for England in previous series. So I think for everyone, it was kind of a bit of a learning curve, both in terms of our selection. Monty Panesar didn't play that first test match. Obviously, Graham Swan was the premier spinner. But it gave me a chance to really, you know, soak in test cricket, you know, spend some time in the middle. Although I only got 9 in my first innings, you know, I think I faced 30 odd balls and got a bit of an experience there. And I realized that I needed to be more proactive against the spin in terms of even if defending, you know, backwards and forwards, try and make sure I can get off strike. So I think I remember that being a good opportunity. I mean, I got 40 odd runs in the game, which, you know, I probably look back and think I would have taken that. But it was also a chance to sort of see how they played in their conditions. And I think Pujara, for me, was excellent. You know, I think his play of spin and the way he used his feet was something I really admired. You know, had a lovely, beautiful defense. So I think from that point of view, it was interesting. But I think what changed it for us was our second innings, because we came out in the second innings and we actually, you know, we really played quite nicely. And I think it gave us belief that, hey, you know, we can face, you know, Ashwin, etc., Oja in these conditions. We can score runs. I think Matt Pryor got 90 odd. I think it was, and Alistair Cook and I put on a good first wicket partnership. So the belief grew. So I think even though we, despite losing that match quite convincingly, I think it gave us belief that, hey, we can bat in these conditions and we need to try and replicate what we did in the second innings. So that's how I remember it. I remember being very nervous in that first innings. I mean, you suddenly realize that all the eyes on you, and, you know, the camera's walking out to bat. And yeah, I think my first thing was just get off strike, just get to 1. Don't get out for naught in your first test innings, please, you know. And I managed to do that. I was disappointed with the way I got out. Ashwin bowled me through the gates, and it was disappointing because normally I stand quite far over against off spin. I remember Hashim Amla, talking to him before I went out there, and he said, look, really bat on off stump and play it the sort of traditional way. It's the way to play it. I mean, the fact that KP can bat differently and almost bat on leg stump is obviously a sign of his genius, but it was always a way I'd played off spin. And I remember getting out through the gate and thinking, you know, I should have really committed to my formula, which I managed to do after that. But yeah, it was amazing. And I think, you know, to see Sehwag play in his aggressive style, I mean, we know how devastating he can be. So I think it gave us a wake-up call and made us realize what we needed to do to be successful.
Nick, what changed in the second test match? Because was there a different strategy that you guys went in with, or was it chat in the dressing room, or was it just same, but the plans were executed better?
I think it was just a continuation of that second innings. You know, I think to get 400, or I think we got, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, close to 400 in that second innings. And I think as a test batting order in any innings, you want to try and aim to get 400. I think, you know, the first innings of a test match, if you can, you know, put up a big total, you've got a good chance. You know, I think if you look back in history, if you get 400 in the first innings of a test match, you know, the odds are good that you're going to be, you know, good for a draw, but potentially a victory. So I think that was very much the word from, Andy Flower and Graham Gooch, who are our coaches. But I think my eyes were sort of quite focused on what I could offer the team. There were a lot of good players around me, Ian Bell, Kevin Peterson, Matt Pryor. You had, some very enigmatic players. And obviously Alistair Cook, had started off well in that first test match and had scored some runs. So I sort of thought, if I can stay out here and really make it difficult and make these bowlers work hard, then the longer we're out there, the chance we have of scoring more runs. I mean, it doesn't sound like rocket science. It's obviously pretty simple mathematics. And that was really my job, was to fight hard and make it really difficult for the Indian bowlers. So I think we didn't look too far ahead, which I think was a good thing. I think it would have been quite easy to go on, oh my God, here we go. We're in India. We've lost the first test match. The Sehwag smashed us around. Pujara's got 200. I mean, the writing's on the wall, right? But I actually remember the heads weren't down too much. Guys were, just looking forward to the next match. I don't remember like thinking, oh, this is doom and gloom, and how are we going to come back from this? I think obviously there was a change made. Panesar came into the team, and it helps when you've got two world-class spinners bowling as well as they did, which made a huge difference, of course. And then obviously Peterson played that innings in Mumbai, which was arguably one of the better innings that's played in India. And when you've got a player like that who come in and use the foundations that I think Alistair and I had kind of put together, you had the balance and the makings of a very good team. And of course, the confidence grew from there.
And I mean, I think Alistair scored 100 and so did Kevin Peterson. And I think both those innings were probably one of the best innings played in Indian conditions. That the fact that they came in the same test match, I think, kind of blew India away, didn't it? So you've then come out in the second innings and absolutely smashed. Were you looking at an IPL contract at that point?
I remember it was very interesting. I remember walking off the field. We needed 55 maybe or something like that. You got to
58 for none eventually, yeah.
58 we needed to win. And as you know, small totals can often be an uncomfortable period for a batting lineup, because everyone's looking around the change room thinking, oh, I hope someone just goes out and does it so I don't have to face the music. You know what I'm saying? And when you've got, some Indian spinners on the fourth, fifth day, with men around the bat, you can see what can happen. You get out to a few and suddenly the pressure mounts. So I remember walking off, and in my head, when they were 9 wickets down, I thought, I'm going to come out here and I'm just going to smash it. I'm not going to, because I think everyone was expecting me to just go out and play methodically. But I knew that I could really take them on and almost switch it up a little bit. And I think if I did that, then it would really give them nowhere to go. So I remember Graham Gooch sort of looking at me, and he was a bit nervous around me in the change room. We had 10 minutes to go before we walked out there. And I could see he wanted to say something to me. And I remember just saying, Graham, don't worry, I've got this, And look, you never know if you've got it. But I just remember going out there saying, I'm going to really try and attack them. And fortunately, it paid off. I think I got some shots away, and as it happens, you hit one or two boundaries and suddenly the shackles are broken and we were away. So it was nice to hit those winning runs, and my mother was at the ground. So it was a very, very sort of proud moment.
Amazing. And of course, you won by 10 wickets. So you go in 1-1 to Kolkata, Eden Gardens, which in some ways is the spiritual home of Indian cricket, after beating India at the Wankhede, which is where India had just won the World Cup a year ago. So you go to Kolkata, and whenever Indian captains needed a win, they've gone to Kolkata, right? And Dhoni needed a win. He needed to beat England because of the debacle. He'd had 8-0 on the tours of Australia and England the year before. And so he was hoping that Eden Gardens would throw up a win for him. And you guys obviously had other plans. Talk us through how you went about beating India in the home of Indian cricket almost.
Well, I think the Mumbai victory was signalled, a very prominent should I say, a prominent match in the sense of believing that, we now had the makeup of a pretty excellent team. You look at the way Panesar bowled in that game, we arguably had the two best spinners. Of course, Ashwin was there as well, and he's a world-class performer. But, they had really ripped out India. I think Tendulkar was, if we don't mind me saying, slightly on the decline at that stage. I know Indian fans aren't going to like me saying that, but I think he was coming towards the end. And
I think we finally accepted it. We finally
a world-class
accepted
player, exactly. And he wasn't maybe the force that could be reckoned with. Kohli had a very quiet series up until the last Test match, and Pujara, obviously Sehwag, you're never quite sure what you were going to get. You're either going to get real magic, or he was going to be out early. So there were some vulnerabilities in the team at the time, and I think going into that Eden Gardens match, I think it was just to try and keep our head on the ground, and make sure we didn't look too far ahead. I think Mumbai had signaled the right way to play. So it was a case of, starting again. Could we get another foundation? Could we go through those processes again, get a big score? Graham Gooch kept talking about, 400, 400, 400. That's what we sort of set our sights on as an England batting unit. And so, for me, again, I was obviously just keep trying to prove myself as Alistair Cook's opening partner. Of course, I took over from Andrew Strauss, so there's some big shoes to fill. But I just thought the worst thing I could do is try and, impress people, get too carried away with the moment. I think it was just about doing my job, try and keep, my head on the ground and make sure I just did my job, let Kevin Peterson, let those guys entertain, let them, impress everyone, but let me just do my job here. So I think Eden Gardens was much of the same. And I think, again, we had another 100-round opening stand. I think I got my first 50 in that match, which was a good 57. Moment. And I was pretty annoyed to get out because I actually hit it. And there was no DRS at that stage. So I remember running past the umpire and going, oh, no, like I smashed it, onto my pad, and I was giving out LBW. But, look, you win some, you lose some. But I felt really good, and I thought now's the time to get 100,
Yeah, so I mean, that was another great Test match for you guys. You eventually ended up winning by 7 wickets. Tendulkar got some runs. Of course, Cook scored his third 100 of the series, 190, massive. And India I think they were just shell-shocked. They didn't expect England to come out there and do what they'd done. And 2-1 up, they went into Nagpur and put India on the back foot. And you guys walked away having won the series, I think the first time in 28 years. It's the only time in the 2010s that a visiting team has actually won a series in India. So wow. That's the level of achievement that you guys accomplished. So Nick, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about that tour. Do you have any abiding memories of Indian players interacting with them maybe, or India as a country from that particular tour?
Yeah, I have a lot of memories. I think fundamentally, Mumbai comes to point. I think post that hitting the winning runs in Mumbai, the next day I walked around the streets of Mumbai and I took some photographs with a very good friend of mine who was one of the photographers on the trip. So we woke up really early and just the morning light coming in, everyone coming in off the train to work, setting up their stalls in the markets was just beautiful. As I've said, the people of India are very friendly, and then also walking through that big park where they play cricket in the morning. I've forgotten the name of it.
Shivaji Park. Shivaji
that's
Park,
it.
Right? That's the one with lots of cricket grounds, cricket matches going on the same ground.
Everyone playing early in the morning, and it was just, it's hard not to put a smile on your face, when you see the adoration and the love for the game.
Were you in disguise on the ground, or
I did have a hoodie up, and then they recognized me, and there was a few people came up, and we had some fun. I played a bit of cricket with them, and it's hard not to soak up the atmosphere, especially as a keen photographer. I think there's so many wonderful images in India. So that was probably the most prominent memory I have. And then the next day, I have a very good coach friend of mine, a guy called Monty Desai, and also another good friend of mine who run who help a lot of the coaches and kids in Mumbai. So I went with him to help his academy. So I did a coaching session early in the morning with his academy because we had about 4 or 5 days off, I think, before we left for Eden Gardens. And that was probably one of my most memorable moments, just to be in the middle of Mumbai and see this cricket ground, which had some of these high rises around it, but these young cricketers all just practicing their cover drives, their drills early in the morning, beautiful time of the day. And, that's where you sort of think, this is why I play this game, and so it was a real honor to be able to help some of those young players. And I look forward to coming back again because it's a special place.
That sounds incredible, Nick. And I'm going to ask you, that's a great story, but I'm going to ask you, we're called Edges and Sledges, Nick. So was there any sledging on that India tour? And if so, can you tell our listeners a little bit about a clean story?
I'm not sure how clean it is, but I definitely got a few words from Virat Kohli during the series. I think I bumped into his ex-girlfriend at the time before the series, who was out at an evening with Kevin Peterson, myself, Yuvraj Singh, all of us were there, and she was there, and I just chatted to her. And I think the word got back that I was speaking to her, and I don't think Virat Kohli was very happy with that. So I think he had a few words to say to me every time I walked out to bat. But I think he was trying to say that it was his girlfriend, and she was saying that it was her ex-boyfriend. So it was like, who's got the story right here? You know what I mean? And so it was quite funny at the time, and I think the players, especially in our England camp, caught hold of it. So we used it as a way to, keep winding him up and, trying to get in his head. But, he's a world-class performer, and he came back and scored a good 100 in the last series. And obviously his career has gone on from strength to strength. But it was quite a funny joke that we had throughout the series. And, something that I always smile about. But, everything was in good faith. I had a chat with Tendulkar after the series, and he congratulated me on my series and said that it was, good of the way that I played in terms of trying to not attack too much, because a lot of players come over and they attack and they get out very quickly. Of course, if you're Matthew Hayden and you've got that sort of record behind you, but not everyone can play like him. And I think, I just think it was nice to hear that from him, someone of his excellence. But it was a very good series. All the players were very friendly, and I think I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great story. Now, Nick, I just want to talk to you about, because we're a fan-run podcast. Our listeners are all fans of the game. Not those many have played the game, but you've got 2 Test hundreds in New Zealand, right? What is the feeling of? Describe it to us. Describe it to our listeners. What is the feeling of getting 100 in a Test match? It's all the blood, sweat, and tears. But what is in that moment? What are you going through?
It's hard to explain. I think when you look back at your career and you look back at, even being a youngster, going to practices, all the stories you hear about coming through the ranks, the different teams that you play for, the blood, sweat and tears, the practices mum and dad take you to in the afternoons, and suddenly you're standing there on the brink of scoring 100 for your country. And it's so many emotions, because this is what you've seen all your heroes do. You've seen Tendulkar score these hundreds. You've seen Callis. You wanted to emulate them. You wanted to achieve that yourself. And I think when you're standing there in the mid-90s, it's hard for your head not to sort of, go ahead a little bit and start to sort of relive the moment. But you've just got to keep telling yourself, come on, one more run, one more ball, and just stay present. If you get ahead of yourself, then mistakes happen. But I think that moment of getting the 100 was, very hard to explain. It's almost like an achievement of I've done it. I've achieved something that can never be taken away, and I've got a Test match 100. That's what I've dreamt about my whole life. So just so much elation. Just wanting to, almost wanting to cry, wanting to laugh, wanting to, just be also very grateful to those of us who have supported you. So I think there were a lot of amazing moments, but getting that first Test 100, nothing is like it.
Like that sounds absolutely amazing. Of course, you then made a great 100 in another Test match at Wellington. So you obviously followed that up with some good form. But you've since retired from cricket. In 2018, you announced your formal retirement. Tell us a little bit about how life is after cricket. You've obviously had a very successful first-class career. You won the championship recently as well in 2016. So. Yeah. You're a great photographer, and I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking, but your Instagram is absolutely fantastic. So tell our listeners about what you're spending your time doing these days.
Yeah, I think cricket and coming out of cricket, a sport that I've spent my whole life doing, has been very difficult. I think there's no doubt about that. I think anyone listening will know what it's like, going from one career to another. And I think from that point of view, it's been tricky, trying to make peace with maybe a few regrets here and there. I think it would have been nice to have played longer for England. I think, I think having had some relative success, I definitely felt I could have, should have played a bit longer, but I let myself down here and there in some of the other series back home in the UK. And
it's quite a hard job to do, because we spoke to another test opener recently, W.V. Raman from the 90s in India, but it's such a hard job to be an opening batsman, and England still haven't found the solution to that conundrum almost. I think they've had 12 different pairs in recent times, so totally understand where you're coming from.
It was a difficult time. I sort of felt when I first was dropped the first time, I shouldn't have been. I should have felt that they should have stuck with me, and it's easy for me to say that, but I think that was something that potentially would have given me a lot more belief that that I had the ability to do the job, and that a bad series wasn't going to define me as a player. So that was tough to deal with, and I think disappointments can be difficult, especially when that in cricket, for example, another opportunity is unlikely to come again, particularly when you think of the strength of English cricket and how many players are trying to get in there. And the fact that I was a little bit older, you always know the pressure is going to be on you. So once that opportunity was gone, you sort of felt like, well, that's it. That's my international experience gone. That's everything I've worked for. So, I found it hard from a motivation point of view to get back, but I worked really hard for the next year and a half to get back in again and have another experience. And then retiring, I think mentally I did find it tough. I have found it tough, but I'm trying to spend my time, helping communities. I've done that through my photography, through traveling. And I think there's a real interest in philanthropy. I mean, I spent some time helping a water charity in northern India, providing safe drinking water to villages in India. Obviously, clean water in India has been an issue for some time. So it was amazing to get out into what I call proper India, to see the villages and some of the rural areas where people reside and where they live. And again, it was beautiful. It was great for me as a photographer, but also to get into some of the villages and use these water projects as a great example. So I think I'd like to continue some of that more philanthropic work. But then also at the same time, I'm an ambassador at Middlesex, my county. So I'm helping them with elite performance, looking at some of the structures that, we can perhaps bring into Middlesex to enhance it as a club. And then moving forward, I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be. I think, part business. I'd like to continue doing some media work. I spent some time with ESPN in India, commentating and working there, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed traveling to other countries, as you know. So working with some of the other experts there and now looking at it from a different perspective, it interests me a lot. I think maybe doing some media presenting. So, even coming back to India and doing that would be a real dream come true. So, we'll have to see. But there's lots of opportunities, I think, and I'd like to, wherever I go, I'm always going to have my camera with me. You can be sure of that.
Fantastic, Nick. It's really commendable that you're actually giving back to the community, and particularly seeing the strong connection with India. I hope we're going to see more and more of you. Nick, I know you're very pressed for time, and I could actually sit here speaking to you for hour after hour because I've got many more things to discuss with you. So maybe we'll have you back on soon. But perhaps you could tell our listeners where they can find you on social media and where they can find your photography as well.
Yeah, just nick.compton is my Instagram feed. And I've got a website, nickcompton.com. So if you want to have a look, maybe we can come over and do an exhibition one day in India, with the people, some of the photographs I took in India when I was playing for England. And, it's always something I'd love to do. And if anyone's in touch, please get in touch with me. I'd love your support. I've always enjoyed the Indian cricket enthusiastic remarks. I talk to them a little bit here and there. They love their cricket. They love, supporting India, which I think is incredible. So, look, I think it's an important time for cricket now. The fans need to get behind the teams, particularly in Test cricket. Because obviously IPL is fantastic and T20 cricket, but there's a threat on Test cricket, and I hope that it's a game that still remains very strong and that players still see it as the pinnacle of their international careers.
Careful what you wish for, Nick. The Indian fans and social media, sword that cut both ways. But we've got the best listeners in the world. So, guys, thank you very much for joining us. And Nick, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hope to have you back on soon and speak to you soon. Thanks again.
Yeah, with pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.
I hope you enjoyed that show. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. It really has been a great week this week. We've had two of our first international cricketers show up, people who have played for their respective sides. We had W.V. Raman come on Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast. If you haven't heard that, you should be listening to that if you enjoy cricket. It's really one of the best out there. And you should also definitely check out Monty Panithar, who showed up on Cyrus Says. That was another really interesting conversation that occurred. If you haven't been listening to a few of our shorter shows, please do that as well. Ashish Vidyarthi has been doing a great job for us. We got 30 episodes now on Begin the Journey. I think you really enjoyed that show. If you haven't listened to it, it helps you with understanding what's going on in this tough time and how to deal with it from a mental health perspective. We've also had some really fun stuff come up on the Smile India show. Shifa's been doing a lot of really good stories over there. Things would just make you happy, so definitely do check that out. And on the more serious side, make sure that you're checking out our regular shows like the Pragati podcast, All Things Policy. They're definitely going to keep you up to date on what's going on in this COVID world. And thanks for listening, and we hope to catch you again next week.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.